Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome back. Today, we're going to start with meditation, just like we do each day. Then I'm going to move into this talk about the path to enlightenment, practicing the path in the workplace. We're going to talk about the art of the friendly no, and we're actually going to be done today, probably closer to 11 o'clock usually is when we kind of finish up for this morning. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your interest in learning the teachings of the Buddha. If you would like to join for meditation, yesterday, if you remember, I didn't guide you in the breathing mindfulness meditation. I guided you in the loving kindness meditation. Well, today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the chanting, and then you do the meditation yourself for the breathing mindfulness and loving kindness, and then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting. And if you'd like to put a breathing mindfulness meditation at the end of your loving kindness, you can do that. So this way you'll kind of transition into meditating on your own, where you don't always need the teacher to guide you, because that's ultimately what's going to help you in your practice to be able to do the meditations on your own. So this is kind of a nice transitionary time for you. So if you'd like to join for the chanting, I'm going to start with that. Then I'm going to just let you guys do your own thing, and then we'll come back out with the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Buddhang Mahakavanang Apivadeyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddho Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanam Bhutto Bhagavati อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะกวาพุทธังมหากวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหากวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังปุตโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So this was a 30-minute meditation. So this is what you're working towards. If this felt like it was a bit long for you, then you know that you've got some more growth that you need to do to be able to get to this amount of meditation per session. If this felt like, wow, this was just right, then okay, you see that you're at 30 minutes, right? Or if it was like, wow, this was like pretty straightforward, it didn't seem like 30 minutes at all, well, you know that, hey, if you would like to meditate more, you can, but this is like the benchmark of what you're looking to work towards. And remember, it can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this amount of meditation per session. So you can gradually work your way up to this amount of meditation of 30 minutes or more per session. Okay, so today I'm going to share with you, starting off, this talk about the path to enlightenment, practicing the path in the workplace. By the time you get to enlightenment, all your relationships are going to be harmonious, whether it's personal relationships or professional relationships. You're not going to have bitterness and hostility and disgruntledness in any of your relationships whatsoever. Other people might be upset or frustrated or agitated, but you're not going to have any of that in your own mind. And the way that you do this is by practicing the teachings every single moment. From the moment you're first starting to wake up, all day long, as you're going to sleep at night, you would like to be practicing these teachings at all times. That's what's going to completely transform your mind. So you're going to need to know how to practice these teachings in the workplace in order to be able to transform your mind. Because if it was only at home that you were practicing these teachings, you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment. Because when you go to work, you're stressed, you're having anxiety, maybe you're not using right speech or right action or things like this. So you'd like to be able to practice all of these teachings at all times. So I'm going to give you some guidance on how to do that. And just like always, you guys are welcome to ask questions here at the temple. If you guys could use the microphones, and then online, you guys can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So first, just like all the other topics that we've been talking about, the very first thing is acquire wisdom. This is going to be needed in order for you to be able to make your way towards practicing the teachings in the workplace. You're going to need to practice the teachings, and in order to practice them, you're going to need to cultivate wisdom about them. So the Eightfold Path is that core central teaching that you would like to be able to focus on developing a deep practice of this teaching. You're going to need to be able to commit it to your memory. So if you need help to be able to do that, practice it, study it on your own. And then if you'd like to sit down with me and kind of almost like you're teaching me, you're welcome to do that. And that way you can confirm your understanding, because you're going to need to be able to practice it. So in order to do that, you're going to need to memorize it. Then in terms of your meditation and generosity, you're going to need to be practicing this in your day-to-day life as well. Sometimes when people go to work, they get really busy with a project. Maybe there's a lot of demands on them from the boss. You might slack off on your meditation practice. That's the exact opposite thing of what you would like to do. When things are really busy, when things are really happening quite a bit at work, that's where you'd like to actually be sure that you're actually meditating, because you're going to need that in order to get you through that period of time. So don't, shrink back from actually practicing meditation in your day-to-day life, especially when work is getting busy for you or things are really challenging in your personal life. You need to be attentive to that. And also generosity. You're going to need to practice generosity in all parts of your life, including in the workplace. You're going to need to be generous with your time, effort, energy, and resources. So not only can you do things like what we typically see, like people bringing bagels to work or donuts to work or a cake to work or things like that, but you can also help with your time and effort. Maybe somebody else is working on a project that you're not really involved in, or maybe it's a project that you are involved in, but you kind of have your work pretty well taken care of. You could actually say, hey, Barbara, can I help you with that? Would you like some help with that? You could offer your assistance to somebody, even though it's not your responsibility, even though it's not something that you're even necessarily getting paid for. You can actually offer your assistance for other people to be able to do things in the workplace by practicing generosity. So that's something that you guys can be doing. You're going to need to eliminate complacency as it relates to the path to enlightenment. The Buddha teaches to eliminate complacency. If you were complacent, meaning you weren't coming to the temple, you weren't meditating, you weren't reading books, you weren't seeking guidance from a teacher, you're not going to get to enlightenment with complacency. There's just no way. So you can understand that as it relates to the path to enlightenment, but you can understand that as it relates to your work environment too. That if you're given a particular project, it's unwise to be complacent about that. Maybe if it's due on Friday, you're like, no big deal. I can do this in like 4 hours. And now you just wait Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and now Thursday afternoon, you start working on it, and the mind's kind of complacent in this situation because it's delaying its work. And now maybe you get into the work and you realize like, oh my goodness, this is actually more involved than I really thought, and I'm not going to be able to get it done by Friday. So if you're actually assigned a project, it's better to be diligent and be practicing energy and effort to be able to apply to a particular project, and don't just delay it and be complacent, but go ahead and start working on it on Monday if you have time. And then, hey, if you finish it up by Monday afternoon or Tuesday, hey, that gives you plenty of time to work on other things or help some of your coworkers with generosity, helping them with the projects that they have. No need to delay this project. So it's important not to be complacent as it relates to the practice of the teachings, to include meditation, but also as it relates to your work and work projects as well. You're going to need to practice right livelihood. The right livelihood is ensuring that you're not causing any harm through the way that you sustain your life. We talked about this on Monday. There's 2 folds of purification that the Buddha teaches you about right livelihood. He teaches you first that it would be unwise to have business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. This is the 5 livelihoods. Anything in those livelihoods would be causing harm to other beings, and therefore harm's going to be coming back to you. So you're going to need to be sure that you're looking at your livelihood or any livelihood that you're moving to and making sure that you're not causing harm, because that harm's just going to come back to you. Then you would like to look at how you're performing your livelihood, that you're not scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain. This is to help you ensure that you're doing it professionally and that you're not going to have difficulties and struggles in the way that you perform your livelihood. So this is the first fold of purification that the Buddha teaches as it relates to livelihood. And usually people are working to get up to that. And if there's something you don't understand about that aspect of livelihood, let me know and I'll help you to understand each one of those components. If you need examples of these or something like that, feel free. I will let you know here in class or outside of class. But then once you work your way up to the first fold of purification, the second fold of purification, which you can see in volume 12, chapter 14, this is about ensuring that whatever livelihood you select, that there aren't any pollutions of mind or the fetters or the taints involved in your selection of a livelihood. I'll give you an example of this. Let's just say I'm 20, 25 years old. I have all this ego and arrogance, and I want to be Mr. Macho Man, and I want to go out there in the world and I want to be a police officer because I enjoy pushing people around, handcuffing them, walking around with my badge and showing everybody how much higher I am than them. And I'm this police officer who's walking through the crowd. And now I've got all this ego and arrogance as part of this. Okay, so this is having selected a livelihood based on ego and arrogance. That doesn't mean every police officer has ego and arrogance. That's not true. But you can see from this example that this individual, they're practicing in such a way that the taints are involved, the conceit is involved, the ego, the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people and putting yourself below people. And there's that central desire that I really enjoy pushing people around and having this ill will towards them and throwing them down on the ground. And I really enjoy this, right? Well, now, maybe after I'm doing that livelihood for a period of time, I get to the point where I'm 28, 30, 32, 34. I start practicing these teachings. I start training my mind a bit. All this pollution starts to come out of the mind. I'm eliminating the ego. And I realize I don't like this job anymore. This job isn't for me. What's really at the heart of what I really am interested in doing is maybe helping people. And that's what I really, truly enjoy. So maybe I leave that particular livelihood and maybe now I'm become a social worker or a therapist or something like this. And this is what I decide I'm going to do for my right livelihood because I've now eliminated these pollutions of mind and I'm working towards this more sustainable livelihood where it matches more with these teachings, where I can practice loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity. I can help people. I can be generous. And that's not to say that being a police officer, you couldn't do those things, because you surely could. But just in this example, this individual started out having the pollutions of mind involved when they selected a livelihood. And while it wasn't one of those business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness and poisons. And while I wasn't scheming, I wasn't flattering, I wasn't hinting, I wasn't belittling, I wasn't pursuing gain with gain, it was a first fold of purification perhaps, but it still had the taints involved. It still had the pollutions involved. And that's why I never really quite perhaps enjoyed that job thoroughly, that it was starting to I was getting burned out on this job. But then when I got rid of those pollutions and I looked clearly inside my mind and said, what is it that I'm really interested in doing? In this example, this individual decided, I would like to be a therapist or a social worker because I really enjoy helping people. So you're going to need to understand that your livelihood might change. Whatever you're doing now, it might not be the thing that you ultimately decide that you're going to be doing long term. You need to be able to get your mind under training and see how things evolve and see how you grow along the path. But you're going to need to get to a point where, based on whatever livelihood you're doing, you thoroughly enjoy it. You have nothing but ambition and enthusiasm and motivation, that you enjoy this work so much that it doesn't even feel like work. That if you had the opportunity to do this and you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it because you enjoy it so much. Of course, you're going to need to get paid because you need an income. But by the time you get to a purified right livelihood, where you've purified the first and second fold, you will enjoy that so thoroughly that you would do it even if you didn't get paid for it, because you just enjoy it that much. And each day you're motivated and you have ambition and vigor to be able to go out and do this work. So it doesn't even feel like work anymore by the time you get to the second fold of purification with your livelihood. By the time you get to the second fold of purification, you won't be getting discontent at work. You'll actually enjoy the work, as I mentioned. And even when you're interacting with coworkers or business partners or whoever it is that you're working with, you won't have any discontentedness in those situations. You won't have stress. You won't have anxiety. Sometimes people think that working and stress go hand in hand and that you're required to feel stressed over and over and over again. This isn't actually true. You don't have to feel stressed about the work that you're doing. But if you're doing this work based in craving, desire, attachment, then yeah, you're going to experience stress as it relates to that. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have sleepless nights. You're going to have difficulties and struggles. But the Buddha's guiding you in how to get to a point where you don't have those things so that you can have peace and joy permanently, right? All throughout your day, all throughout your individual weeks and months. This is the teaching from the Buddha on this. These are his words. I have this in the book where you guys can see that he's teaching this first fold of purification. And then you can look in volume 12, chapter 14, and you can see the second fold of purification. And you'll see words from me in there too, helping you to understand this. Understand that the mind can only do one thing at a time. You guys learned this as part of the Eightfold Path, as part of right concentration. I taught you guys singleness of mind. This was way back on Monday. I'm not sure if you guys remember this or not. That it's important to just do one thing at a time. If you're washing dishes and your mind is wandering, you would like to cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the washing the dishes. If you're in a business meeting and your mind is wandering, you're not going to be able to perform very well in that situation. So you would like to cut that off and let it go. No matter what the mind is thinking about, pull it back to the business meeting and actually apply your effort and energy to the business meeting. So even in the work environment, you're going to need to be able to practice singleness of mind. If you're on the phone talking to a business partner and one of your coworkers walk in, it would be very unwise to try to be talking to both people at the same time. And if every single time somebody walks in your office, you get off the phone or you put the phone down and you address the coworker, what you're going to notice is the people in your office are going to get used to barging into your office and interrupting you when you're on the phone. If I was you, I would do things single-threadedly. That if you're on the phone, talking on the phone, and somebody walks into your office, including your boss, just continue to handle the phone call. If this person really has something super urgent and you can tell that you just need to address this situation, in that rare situation, you might ask the person on the phone, can you please hold for a moment? I need to take care of something. And now you put them on hold and now you address this situation. But if you do that regularly as part of a regular practice, you're going to see lots of people are going to be coming and barging into your office. This happened with me when I was teaching at home. I would be on Zoom in my room at my desk talking to a student in a personal guidance session, and my son would barge into the room. Dad, I have an emergency, right? And I would just let him sit there. I wouldn't even address him. I would just keep talking to the student. And then he would just stand there and stand there and stand there and stand there. And sometimes he realized what he had to talk about wasn't so important and he would just walk away. And after he did that maybe 12, 15 times, he learned that he can't just barge into dad's room, which is kind of like my office as well. And dad's not going to just address him just because he walked into the room. So if you do this with your coworkers, rather than tell my son, hey, stop barging in here. You have to be more considerate. You have to be more respectful. This is putting my expectations on him. Instead, I just made decisions about how I interact in the world. And this taught the people around me of how I choose to interact. So when my son walked in, I made the choice not to address him, to not talk to him, and just continue to talk to the student. And now over time, 12, 15 different times, he learned that's not what dad's going to do. Dad's not going to break away and start addressing me. And now he just doesn't even come in. And after he stopped coming in, I would actually talk to him. And I said, okay, now that I realized he eliminated his craving and he understood how dad practices, I let him know that, hey, just because you think that it's an emergency doesn't mean it's an emergency. So sometimes I would ask him, like, what is it that you had that was so important? He was like, Dad, the batteries in my remote control ran out and I needed new batteries. And I was like, oh, that's your emergency. Okay, I see. That's not an emergency, son. I said, if the house is burning down, then you come let me know, okay? And then I'll help you. But if it's not anything that's that significant, Dad's not going to break out of the conversation, right? So he learned this through just me practicing and making decisions in the way that I know that I needed to make decisions. So you can do this in your work environment too, where you just handle one thing at a time. If you're talking to a coworker and your phone rings, maybe you don't answer your phone. You just continue to talk to your coworker, and that rolls over to voicemail, and then you call that person back. We have voicemail now. We have caller ID. You can always call that person back. It's helpful to handle whoever's in front of you. If you're involved in a conversation in your office and you're always going to the phone and answering the phone, the person that you're talking to feels like they're less important and they don't really have your time and attention. So if you just handle things one at a time, and whoever you're dealing with at the beginning, just continue to deal with that situation. When I was in business, we had this kind of thing set up where we ran a massage business. And if a customer walked in through the door, we always handled that first. Then the phone. Then after the phone, we had live chat as well. There was like an order of importance that we always handled the person who was in our office first, who was in the massage center first. So if somebody walked in and the phone rang, my staff understood, handle the person who walked in. That's the person who's showing up. That's the person who's in front of you. That's the first priority. The phone is the second priority. And we had caller ID and we had voicemail. And sometimes we would call those people back and we didn't get them, and that was okay. And our business just grew and grew and grew. And if somebody was checking a customer out and the phone rang, I taught my staff, don't answer the phone. Just let it roll to voicemail or look at the caller ID later. Handle the person that's in front of you. And our customers absolutely enjoyed the way that we handled things because they always felt like they were important, and they weren't just kind of second priority and we're trying to usher people in through the phone. Instead, we were handling the people that was in front of us. So you can practice singleness of mind even in the workplace, doing one thing at a time. That's this singleness of mind as well, making sure that you're not focusing on multiple things. Because like I gave you guys that analogy of a racehorse. If you've ever seen a racehorse run around a track, when it goes to the barn, it can't calm down. It's really hyped up because it's just used to running around the track constantly. Your mind's going to be the same way. If you don't practice singleness of mind, you're going to be jumping around from thing to thing to thing at work. And when you come home, you're going to find it very challenging to relax. And then now with this stress, you go back to work with more stress. Or when you're at home, you have difficulty sleeping. Now you have a lack of sleep. Now you go to work with a lack of sleep. It produces more stress. It's like a never-ending cycle that you are at work, bouncing around. You get all stressed. You have difficulty sleeping. Now you don't have very good sleep. So you go to work and you're tired and you're not making wise decisions. You're bouncing around. So you need to put an end to this continuous cycle where the mind is stuck and thinking that if you just keep going, that somehow there's like a magic pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So you're always going to have work to do. You're not going to ever be done. So just gradually work towards your goals and objectives. And sometimes you're going to need to push yourself away from your work and choose to just relax. And that's okay. Right? As I was mentioning, you can deal with one person at a time. As people are coming in to your office, you can just deal with one person at a time. This is going to help you to be able to stay single-minded, and it's going to help you to have focus and concentration and bring your wisdom through in your moral conduct when you're interacting with people. Understand that when your mind is calm, there's going to be mindfulness or awareness of mind. When there's awareness of mind, there's going to be concentration. And when there's concentration, there's going to be able to be access of wisdom, so that now you can use that wisdom to make wise decisions and produce wholesome outcomes or wholesome Gotama. If you allow your mind to be shaken up, you're not going to have mindfulness, you're not going to have concentration, and you're not going to be able to access your wisdom to be able to make wise decisions and experience improved results at your work environment. So when things are happening, everyone else might be looking like, oh my goodness, the sky's falling. Oh my goodness, the sky's falling. You would like to stay calm. I worked for this company one time, this one particular company, it was a software company, and they went through some financial trouble. It was a really big company, and they needed to end up up laying off a bunch of people, and they were laying off people right and left, and people were going around just so upset and so frustrated. Their mind was just circling and circling and circling. But if you keep your mind calm, then you can deal with whatever it is that you have to deal with, even in those kinds of situations where other people around you are all up in arms about whatever it is. An enlightened being is not a follower. They're not going to conform to what other people are doing. So as you're seeing other people struggling in the world, that doesn't mean you need to struggle. You can maintain your calmness and composure. If other people are upset that you are not up, that your mind is calm and peaceful, that's their craving, desire, attachment. It doesn't help you, and it doesn't help them to just follow along with the crowd and allow your mind to be all upset and uncalm. Instead, maintain your calmness and composure, and now you'll be able to get to wise decision making. This is the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to practice this in your workplace. Each individual one of these can be practiced in the workplace, the way that the Buddha taught it. This is going to train your mind. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one of these and I'm going to apply it to like a work environment where you can see how to like apply some of the same principles and the same teachings that the Buddha taught in a work environment. Not in terms of like how to train the mind to get to enlightenment, but in terms of how to apply it to a work environment. Here's what I mean. Right view, at the heart of that, the Buddha is teaching you to be responsible for your own emotions, your own feelings. Of course, right view is understanding the Four Noble Truths and that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing your discontent feelings. That is right view, that you understand that it's not the outside world that's causing the feelings within your own mind, that it's your own cravings, desires, attachments that's causing that. That's what you need to understand in terms of training your mind. But as it relates to work, you can understand that what the Buddha is teaching you as part of right view is to accept responsibility for your own feelings, your own intentions, your own thoughts, your own speech, your own actions. And you can apply this to your work too, where you're accepting and acknowledging responsibility for the projects and assignments that you're given, that you're not blaming other people for your challenges and your difficulties in your work, in your projects. Everything that you experience at work is a result of your decisions. So you can accept that responsibility and really take charge of your career by practicing right view in the way that I'm describing here. Then if you remember right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, these are essential teachings that you're going to need to practice at all times within your relationships and your livelihood. That if you're practicing right intention, right speech, and right action in all of your relationships at work, that's the natural law of Gotama. That's the natural laws that the Buddha taught. You're going to have really healthy relationships. Other people don't need to know that you're practicing these teachings necessarily. You can just practice them because they're the natural laws, and you're going to see you're going to have great relationships at work. So be sure you're paying attention to that in order to cultivate wholesome relationships in your livelihood, because how you have relationships in your livelihood, that's going to help you to make more and more progress in your livelihood. When I graduated college, I moved to this completely new city and I got this job at a software company. And as I was working there, I started having relationships with more and more people in all these different software companies. And when I was interested in moving from one job to the next, it was so easy. There were people that were more than willing to hire me because I had all these different relationships. One time I needed to move from this one job to another job because like I told you, that company was laying off people. I had a job before I was ever even laid off because we all knew what was going to be happening and what departments were being cut. I didn't even have to send in a resume. I didn't even have to apply. People already knew me from the work environment. And then moving from that new company, I needed to move from that company to another company. Same thing. Didn't even have to submit a resume. And people were willing to offer me plenty of positions, plenty of money to move from one company to the other. And that's based on the relationships that I had in the environment and in the professional world. So you would like to make sure that there are no negative relationships in your life whatsoever. If there's somebody at work that you don't like and you don't like the way they handle things, remember that's your cravings, desires, attachments that's producing that. The reason why you dislike this person is because you have certain expectations of them and you want them to be a certain way and they're not that way. your mind's craving permanence. So you need to be able to understand that if you don't like somebody, that's coming from your own mind, and having a negative relationship in the work environment isn't helpful at all. Having a negative relationship even in your personal life isn't helpful at all. So make sure that as you're cultivating relationships in the work environment, that they're all positive, they're all wholesome, that you're being polite and kind and friendly and respectful, because that's going to help you to grow in your professional career. Then, as you're at work, you're still going to need to be practicing the mental discipline section as it relates to your livelihood: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Remember, right effort is to eliminate the unwholesome qualities from your mind and to cultivate wholesome qualities, applying the effort to do that. There's the 4 aspects of right effort: preventing unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind, eliminating unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind, cultivating wholesome qualities that are not yet in your mind, and then supporting and encouraging and maintaining the wholesome qualities that are in your mind, bringing them to full growth and full perfection. So you're going to need to practice that right effort. Right mindfulness is practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness: being aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Those bodily sensations are the early warning system alerting you that your mind's about to get discontent. And that's where you'd like to take action and cut that off. Apply right effort and cut off those unwholesome qualities. It might become a feeling for several months or maybe even years as you're getting more and more familiar with this path and you're developing your mindfulness. If it becomes a feeling, cut it off and let it go there. If it's affecting the condition of your mind because you haven't cut it off, be sure you cut it off there. And then over time, you'll get familiar with these mental objects, what the symptoms of them are, so that you can actually eliminate them. Those are the 10 fetters, the mental objects. You would like to purify the mind of those. So you're going to need to be practicing this awareness of mind at your work, so you're aware of what's going on within your own mind. Then you're going to need to be practicing right concentration, which is developing a meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. So as you're practicing the mental discipline section at work, this is going to help you to be able to perform at better and better quality and at higher and higher levels. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on this? Jake?
My first question would be about right livelihood. Mm-hmm. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that like the livelihood of being an artist or like a musician is very complicated when trying to be on the path of enlightenment due to a lot of the feelings that you put into your art. Mm-hmm. Is this something that you've
Yeah, all the livelihoods that fit into those 5, you could perform them while being on the path to enlightenment. Oftentimes artists are looking through their art to elicit some kind of emotional response. That's oftentimes what they're doing. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't be on the path to enlightenment themselves and training their mind and being an artist as well. There's nothing about being on the path to enlightenment or being enlightened that would inhibit you from being an artist, of a musician or a visual artist or performing artist or anything like that. In fact, no matter what livelihood you choose, you actually do that better as an enlightened being than you ever would in the unenlightened state.
Okay, my second question would be, I have sort of come to realize that I have certain skills that are locked behind, let's say, a particular type or piece of music or a particular conditioned setting. Is there a way to sort of unlock that and get access to those higher and optimized skills? Or is it just doing the work to develop those skills in an unconditioned setting?
Can you give me some examples?
A good example is, so I know how to program, but I know that I am better and more optimized if I'm listening to heavy metal music.
Okay. So as you train your mind more and more, you'll actually function better and better without those kinds of things. Right now, your mind is holding on to that, and that's a conditioned experience. But as you train your mind to not have central desire, that you need to be hearing that music in order to be able to do whatever it is that you do, you'll be able to do it in any situation. Whether it's that or any number of things, I've seen other people like, when I was growing up, I used to play billiards or pool. And I know some people that when they were sober, they were horrible at playing pool or darts. But once they start getting a couple drinks in them, they were actually really quite good at playing this, because that's what their mind was used to. That's what they're comfortable with. And that's what's familiar to them. And the mind's craving that permanence. And when they don't have what their mind's craving, then they're in that impermanence, and the mind's shaken up by that. So right now, your mind has that craving for heavy metal music, and you feel comfortable in that environment, and you can code in that environment. But ultimately, what you would like to do is train your mind that you can code no matter what's going on. And that's where you'll actually be liberated. Because if you can only code in this situation or do it very well when there's heavy metal music playing, your mind's not free. It's not liberated. It's still bound up. So you would like to gradually train your mind to be able to do this, where sometimes you listen to heavy metal music and code, and sometimes you don't, and you kind of gradually phase it out. And that doesn't mean that you won't ever do it with heavy metal music, but you would like to get to the point where you're just as proficient with the music as without the music. And this way your mind's free and you can code no matter what, and you're just as proficient. And I would suggest that if you're training your mind enough with like breathing mindfulness meditation and all these other teachings that the Buddha's sharing, that by the time you get to the point where there is no heavy metal music and you're actually still able to code, you're actually going to be way more optimized in that situation, because you're going to be purely practicing singleness of mind, and your mind's going to be very focused and very refined in those situations.
Thank you.
Anything else you guys would like to ask? See if we have anything online. Okay. You have a question? Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
Good morning. So a lot of theater tradition in the West is focused on catharsis.
Focused on what?
Catharsis.
What's
so
that
like
mean?
Providing an opportunity for the people on stage to experience an emotion, so then the audience can identify with that emotion and they can experience it without having to go through a traumatic event of some kind. And it can be therapeutic or it can be community building. Mm-hmm. But what I've noticed a lot about training in Asia as an artist is that it's not about catharsis, it's about community connection through humor and being able to look at a problem and recognize, take the perspective that, oh, how funny this is that we're upset about this, because there's several other options, several other ways to look at it. Mm-hmm. So what I'm wondering is going into an environment where there's a mix of students that are coming from Western and Eastern backgrounds, and they're all aspiring to be professional artists. As I look at this, I see, this is a lot of what I do in my rehearsals and in my creative process. But what I'm a little concerned about, what I'm struggling with, is how much of it to label as Buddhism and how much of it to label as just process, with students and families being sensitive to different cultural things. I don't want to say, oh, it's not this, but I guess I'm wondering about like inclusivity and accessibility while still being true to the teachings and to my own intention.
Yeah. What I would suspect, I'm not an artist. I've known plenty of artists, but I'm not an artist. But what I would suspect is whatever art someone's doing prior to the path to enlightenment, whether it's visual art or graphic art or performing arts or audio, with music and stuff like that, whatever art they're doing before the path to enlightenment, as they get on the path to enlightenment and they train their mind, their art's going to evolve and it's going to be different, right? Let's just say somebody is in a very dark space, very depressed. Their art is going to reflect that, because that's what's going on within their own mind. But as they train their mind and their mind becomes more cheerful, more uplifted, more glad, more bright, I would suspect that we'll see their art evolve in that way too. Even people who aren't on the path to enlightenment, we can see people who have had long-term careers in art, and their artwork evolves too, because your artwork is based on what's going on in your own mind. So while right now you might associate performing arts with what you just described, and that's kind of what you're used to, as you train your mind more and more, your performance and your artwork that you do through directing performances will most likely evolve and change. And that's okay, because that's impermanence. It's just going to be different. And then the audience will relate to that, and you will be able to use the qualities and the skills and the abilities that you've gained throughout your entire career to now create art still, but it's just a different type of art than it was when you were maybe off the path to enlightenment. And you just need to be accepting of that change and that evolution, because that's how an artist evolves, as they grow, as they age. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to move into this next topic. This is the last topic for our entire course here. And this is actually really simple. It only takes me about 10 minutes to talk about it and teach it. And then if you guys would like, we can practice if you like. First, let me just kind of set this up so you guys understand what I'm talking about here. I title this The Art of the Friendly No, How to Say No Without Saying No, right? Some people are like, that sounds like a book title. You should write a book about that. But I can't write a book about this because I need to explain it to you. Okay, so you guys understand craving, desire, attachment, that when an unenlightened being has craving, desire, attachment, they're longing, yearning for something. If they get what they want, they're going to be happy, they're going to be excited, they're going to be elated. But if they don't get what they want, their mind's going to get angry or frustrated or some other painful feeling, disappointment. And because of the lack of wisdom of the unenlightened mind, it will typically associate those painful feelings with something external. And then what the mind's going to do is it's going to push this person away, or it's going to push this situation away. This is called aversion. This is why you've pushed people away out of your life. And this is why people have pushed you away out of their life, because they're experiencing painful feelings and they're attributing it to you. And they think the way to solve that is push you away. Or they're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile through their intentions, speech, and actions, or they're going to put their expectations on you and try to control you. So in a situation where people are coming to you, whether they're friends or family or co-workers or things like this, and they're asking things of you, in certain situations, you're going to need to say no, essentially. But when you do that, if they have a craving, desire, attachment in their mind, they're going to really struggle with that. They're going to experience painful feelings. They're going to attribute those painful feelings to you and not realize that they're actually coming from their own mind. And you will actually lose friends in this way. You will lose professional colleagues in this way. You will lose opportunities this way, because the unenlightened mind doesn't like the word no or can't or don't or things like this. So the problem is that the unenlightened mind typically doesn't like to hear these kinds of words. And the solution is to be able to say and communicate what it is that you would like to communicate, but do it in alternative ways. So one time I had a friend that came to me when I was right out of college. I was maybe 6 months out of college, and my really good friend, who'd been friend for a long time, he was still in school. He was in his last year of college, of university. And he came to me at my home on a Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and he said, David, I need to borrow some money. Can I borrow your money so I can pay my tuition at school, my room and board at school? I'm trying to be independent from my parents, and I would like to borrow your money. Well, I knew that I was making very little money at that time, and I had to pay bills. And if I didn't pay bills, I was going to be kicked out of the place where I was living, and I didn't have anywhere to go. If he didn't pay his bills, he was going to go back to his parents' house because he had a decent relationship with his parents. So I told him no, that I couldn't let you borrow money. I never saw that guy ever again. Never heard from him. Don't even know where he's at to this day. Never heard from him ever again. And this happens when you don't have the wisdom. One of the things that I did is I actually asked him, I said, well, what did you do last night? He said, oh, I went to the bar. I had fun with this person and that person. I was like, really? Did you drink a lot? He's like, yeah, I had like 10 or 12 drinks. Da, 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 da. I was like, well, why didn't you use that money for your tuition? right? And he didn't like that very much. And that was really unwise for me to be able to say that. I mean, it was helping him to be able to see that he's making unwise decisions. But nonetheless, I lost a really good friend in that situation because I didn't understand the art of the friendly no. What would be a better situation here is that you can say no without saying no. So in that same situation, if he asked me to borrow money today, I would say, his name was Jeremy. Jeremy, I don't have the money right now at this point in time, but if I find some money that I am able to allow you to borrow, I'll definitely let you know. Right? So I never said no, right? And I'm leaving the door open. Or I might say something like, I appreciate that you're such a good friend and you're willing to ask me for money. If I'm able to let you borrow this money, I will let you know. At this point, I'm unable to, but if I'm able to, I'll definitely let you know. Right? So you're kind of leaving this door open and keeping it in positive terms. So not only can you experience this when people are interested in borrowing money, but also like if someone's inviting you to a party. Say someone's inviting you to a party, like they're really excited to have this housewarming party or a birthday party or something like this. And now they're inviting you. If you are like, no, I can't go, I'm already busy with something else. If they have this craving for you to be there, they're going to get painful feelings and they might push you aside. Right? They might have aversion, or they might be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or they might start pressuring you and trying to put on expectations like, come on, man, like you're my best friend. We've been friends for 10 years. How can you not come to my birthday party? Come on, right? You might experience these kinds of things. So if you practice this art of the friendly no, how to say no without saying no, instead of saying, no, I can't come to your party, you might say, hey, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate that you look at me as such a good friend. If I'm able to come, I will let you know, right? So you're not saying no, but you're saying it in this way, right? And now, maybe even at that particular moment, you know that there's a 99.9% chance that you're not actually going to come to this party. You can still say it that way because you're not interested in lying, right? You're not interested in that. And you're not interested in saying no because now their mind can experience struggles and difficulties and they attribute that to you. Instead, you can use these kinds of things and you can get really creative with these kinds of things and come up with a lot of different ones. Whereas if you're using this word no, their mind typically doesn't actually like that. Right? So if you guys have examples that you would like to talk about, or if you'd like to hear some ways that you can do this, I'll help you with this. This is something very simple, but it's very impactful in your life because you're going to be in situations where people are wanting and expecting you to do something and you can't do it. And if you say no or can't or don't or any of these other things, whether it's in a personal life or professional life, they're going to have painful feelings. Again, you didn't cause it, but they don't know that. And now they're going to attribute their painful feelings to you, and you're going to lose professional colleagues and personal relationships. So if you get used to doing this kind of thing, it'll actually really help you to maintain your relationships. You have a question, Jake?
This makes a lot of sense in professional life and with other adults. My children obviously do not, like, no is like the worst word that they can hear. So how would I go about it? Like an example would be I would like, come up and they say, I want more screen time.
I would say that's not what we're going to be doing right now. It's really unwise for you to be doing that. We're going to start heading off to grandma's house now. So we need to start taking showers and getting ready to leave. So I never said no, right? Last night, I was putting together a model airplane with my son because he's got this new model airplane that's like a remote control airplane. And it was like, he goes to bed typically at 9:30. It was already 10 o'clock and we were like, maybe halfway through it. And of course he wanted to finish it, right? So we couldn't get this one screw to work. And I said, I think that we should put this on hold. It's already 10 o'clock. You need to be getting to sleep. How about we address this tomorrow after we've had a good night's sleep? He's like, no, Dad, I really would like to do this now. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure you would like to do it now. If I was you, I would put it aside so that you can do it when your mind's more thoughtful. It's more clear. This way you can get a good night's sleep and do good at school tomorrow. And he's like, okay, yeah, I think I'll do it that way. Perfect. Right? I never said no. I didn't force him or control him or tell him what to do. He made the choices for himself. And then he actually went upstairs and he sat in his room and messed around on his phone for a while. He still didn't get to sleep until quite late. This morning, he wasn't interested in going to school. He told his mom he had a headache and he didn't feel like he would like to go to school. So I told Mom, I said, Mom, I think you should go let him know he has to go to school. These were choices that he made to stay up late like that, and he needs to experience those consequences. So that's what she did. She said, yeah, you got to go to school. So he got himself together and he ended up going off to school. So at no point do I say no, unless it's like something really significant, right? Because there's situations like maybe they're trying to cross the street and there's a truck coming down the street. It's not like, there's a truck coming down the street. You might consider getting out of the street. It's like, no, get out of the street. Come on, So you're going to need to use that from time to time, but you would like to do it wisely. And in situations where you don't need to use it, no need to use it. You'll find other more creative ways to talk to people, and you'll see that people will relate to you and be more influenced by you because you're not coming out with these no, can't, don't. It sounds very strong, very affirmative, where there are situations where maybe if someone was trying to physically abuse you or sexually abuse you, you're going to say, no, you can't do that. Stop, right? You might need to say those kinds of things, but those are completely different situations than what we're talking about here. I have a question.
Sometimes in my relationships, I've noticed in my own, like when I'm approaching it and asking someone, do you want to go do this? And I receive a response like that, it causes more craving, desire, and attachment within me because it's so open-ended. Mm-hmm. Because it's so there's a part of me that's like, oh, maybe they'll give me a yes in the future. So then there's that craving, desire, or maybe, it's like I don't have a firm, kind of they're leaving it so open, right? Mm-hmm. And in those instances, there's inside, maybe there's the craving, desire, attachment inside me mm-hmm. to feel I can move on from wanting to go with that person and go do something else now instead, right? Yeah.
And that's why you're doing this as a person who's talking, is you're not interested in being the one that shuts the door on their craving, desire, attachment. You would like them to be able to release it from their own mind on their own terms, because then you might not even be around when that's occurring and they won't be able to falsely attribute their painful feelings to you, that they can see that it's being caused within their own mind. That is a better way for them to be able to experience that than to attribute it to you as the person who's told them, no, I can't come.
But I think I'm not sure you understand what, if I'm on the other end.
Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying.
Okay. So when I'm in relationship, mm-hmm. because I like to have that kind of all right, that person's not interested. Mm-hmm. And I know that mm-hmm. now because they've told me yes or no. Mm-hmm. Because of that, because that's the way I like to experience this type of relating. I like to show up that way. Mm-hmm. So what you're teaching here, doesn't it wouldn't be a way that I'd like to experience relationship.
Yeah, because you have a certain craving, you have a certain expectation in your mind. And what I'm teaching here is how to make sure that you're not the one who's shutting the door on that person's craving, because you're describing the problem. The whole reason why I'm teaching this, you're describing that because you as a receiver, you're expecting things to be a certain way. You're craving for things to be a certain way. And what I'm teaching you is how to do things in a way that doesn't allow that person's mind's craving to either be fulfilled or to be able to be shut down in your presence, because that's where they're going to associate their painful feelings to you. And now you have difficulties in this relationship. So in terms of getting to harmonious relationships, if you're going around telling people, no, I can't, I won't, blah, 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 and you're doing this regularly, people are going to push you away. You're going to find that it's difficult for you in these relationships. Even in situations where people would prefer to hear a no or a yes, those individuals are having certain cravings. If they're longing, yearning for it, I say prefer because that's what I tend to think. But in those, what you're saying is, I want people to say either yes or no. That's the craving. So even in that situation, if you give a yes or a no, this individual's craving is now going to be triggered, and you're in their presence. They're going to attribute those feelings to you, and they're going to push you away. It's going to happen.
It just seems like it's like in relating the way that it's being suggested, it's like being left so unclear. Yeah.
Not everything's going to be cut and dry. Not everything's going to be a closed book. But if you have a craving for closure and you want every single thing to be a definitive choice, that's your craving. Not everything's going to be that way. And if you do that, if you do the yes or no, now in your presence, this person's going to get angry. They're going to attribute that to you. They're going to push you away. So you're not the only person that whenever I teach this, there's people that are usually like, this doesn't sound right. This, people have different thoughts on it. But more likely than not, what people often do is they walk away from this conversation. They start trying to practice this and they see how well it works. And they're like, they oftentimes will call me back or send me a message and say, David, thank you so much for teaching that. I understand now. Sometimes people don't understand this when they first hear it and they first start understanding what I'm sharing. But if you sit with this and you start practicing it, you're going to see that it works really well to maintain your relationships. Whereas if you're regularly saying no and shutting people down, it's going to cause challenges in your life. You're going to see broken relationship after broken relationship.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me see. Don't have anything online. So sometimes what I do is I see if you guys have situations, which is what you guys just did, and get some examples and help you guys. So if any of you guys ever would like help with these, feel free to let me know. Like I mentioned, there's been students here before that are like, oh, this isn't affirmative enough. I like things more clear cut. And oftentimes they walk away thinking that, maybe they're not going to practice this. But then when they actually start practicing it, they see how well it works and they're really pleased that they actually learned it. So this is something that you're going to maybe need to sit with and practice and see how it works. It's going to work so much better for you because you're going to see situations where you say no and can't and don't, that it causes difficulties in your relationships. And now you're going to see the solution, that you already have that solution and you can start implementing this if you like. So then the very last thing to share with you guys, now that we're bringing our course to a close, is continued support, because you're going to need help. This area of relationships, it's very challenging for people to be able to have relationships. This is one of the biggest challenges you guys probably have in your day-to-day life, is having relationships with other people. But the thing is that if you can cultivate the wisdom about how to have healthy and harmonious relationships, this is the most fulfilling, most sustaining, most satisfying thing about life. life is to be able to have wonderful relationships with people where you don't have expectations of them, they don't have expectations of you, and you guys can live life so harmoniously. But you're not going to be able to accomplish that in just 5 days, right? So this is like a ability to learn some of the things that I have to share with you. You're going to probably take 10% or 15% of what I've shared here and probably implement that. And then maybe you take this course again, or you listen to some of the recordings again, and now you get 30 or 40 or 50% of what I've been sharing, and you implement that. And then maybe you learn it again and you get up to 80, 90, or 100%. It's going to take more than one time to be able to learn these things, to be able to experience the harmonious relationships. Because it's one thing to intellectually learn, but it's a whole other thing to put it into practice. That's where you really see the results, is putting it into practice. So you're going to need continued support on this journey. So here's some things that I suggest you guys do to now integrate these teachings into your day-to-day life. Is first, attending weekly classes, either in person or online, and then attend in-depth training like this on an as-needed basis. So if you'd like to attend weekly classes, we have the group learning program that meets each Sunday and Wednesday, and you can learn here, you can learn online because I live stream all these classes. And then we have the Pali Canon and English study group, which meets each Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So you're always welcome to attend the weekly classes and then take the in-depth learning opportunities on an as-needed basis. You'd like to be integrating this into your life where you're just kind of trickling the teachings in through regular classes and courses and retreats. Then this first book that I've been mentioning, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. If you haven't read that yet, I would recommend that you read it. Maybe just 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. Just read it little by little. It's kind of like a meal that if you sat down and you took a really big bite of pizza, it would be challenging for you to actually digest that. So you'd like to take little tiny bites, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, and just kind of sit with that, because you're going to need to reflect on these things and independently verify it. So if you read it in this way, it'll probably take you about 6 months to actually read the book. And remember, you're not reading for completion here. You're reading to be able to understand what it is that is being shared with you. I have some students that have been studying with me for multiple years. They tell me they've read this book 8, 12 different times. And each time they read it, they learn something new from it. So I encourage you to be able to read that regularly, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. Just make it part of your normal day. Maybe you do it before meditation or after meditation. Maybe you do it in the morning after breakfast, or maybe you do it in the evening before bed. However you decide to do it. If you sit down and read like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you're taking so much information in, it's going to be hard for you to digest it and implement it in your day-to-day life. If you get used to reading this way, one of the things that you're going to notice is that you will have just experienced something, and then because you're reading 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, maybe 3 or 4 days later, you're going to stumble into a teaching of the Buddha that explains to you what you just experienced and how to do it better in the future in a more wise way. So now when you experience that situation in the future, you'll have the ability to do that. Or you'll be reading something, and now like 3, 4, 5 days from now, you're going to encounter that exact situation that the Buddha was actually teaching you about, and you'll already have the wisdom of how to deal with it. So if you trickle the teachings in through reading like this and through classes, courses, and retreats, that's going to make all the difference in the world for you. Then you would like to be frequently practicing generosity, sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. You're going to need to be doing that frequently on a daily basis. The Buddha teaches you this, to be practicing generosity on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be hour upon hour upon hour. I gave you some suggestions of how you can integrate this into your life. You're already at the market. You're already buying yourself some orange juice. Buy an extra bottle or two for somebody at your hotel, or one of your friends or family members or coworkers or something like that. You can integrate this into your day-to-day life. You're coming out of your house, you see your neighbor's trash is blown all over the yard. Hey, take 5 minutes and help clean it up, right? These are things that you can do that are not going to take this enormous amount of time for you. So practicing generosity is going to train your mind to let go, so you can let go of craving, desire, attachment. Then you're going to need to improve your moral conduct using the Eightfold Path. If you're out there practicing wrong speech, wrong action, and wrong livelihood, you're just creating more and more unwholesome karma for yourself. It's kind of like the oil pipe has busted and now it's spewing oil all over the world. You need to shut that down, because the longer that you just spew the wrong speech, wrong action, and wrong livelihood into the world, you're just producing more and more unwholesome karma for yourself to deal with. So by improving your moral conduct through the Eightfold Path, this is going to shut that down, and it's going to be less and less unwholesome karma for you to clean up, because you're going to need to clean up all of this unwholesome karma from the past that has been created. But you're not going to just go clean up all the oil on the floor. You got to shut down the pipe first and then clean up the oil on the floor. Then you would like to develop a meditation practice of 2 or 3 times per day for 30 minutes or more, knowing that this is going to take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up. This is what's referred to as the way of practice. The Buddha was asked during his lifetime of how could you boil down his teachings to what can I do on a day-to-day basis in order to be able to practice these teachings and make my way to enlightenment. And he shared to practice generosity every day, to improve your moral conduct every day, and to be working on meditation every day. And if you're doing that, you're making your way to enlightenment. You're going to need to learn all the detailed teachings to make your way to enlightenment and harmonious relationships. But these are the things that you can be doing on a daily basis to be gradually making your way towards enlightenment. And then as you need help, you can be seeking guidance from a teacher on a whatever basis that you need, whether you like to schedule appointments and we can meet online through Zoom, whether you like to meet here in Chiang Mai or any other city that I might be in. If we're in the same city, you can just send me a message and say, hey, David, can we meet? And then we can meet up, right? So we can sit down and talk. I will help you, because it's a matter of learning in classes and courses and books and stuff like this. Yeah, you're going to need to do that. But then you're going to have personal situations that you're looking to, how can I relate this particular teaching to this situation that I'm in? And that's where a teacher is going to be able to help you. You wouldn't be able to do this alone. Only a Buddha can get to enlightenment by themselves. That's the 3 criteria of what makes a Buddha, is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So you're not a Buddha. You're going to need help along this path. The last Buddha that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need guidance. You're going to need help along the path. So feel free to reach out anytime. You can get help in 4 different ways. You can ask questions in classes. You can post in our Facebook group, and I'll be the only person who replies and helps you in the Facebook group. You can send me a private message through any of the messaging apps or email or anything like that, or you can schedule personal guidance. These are the 4 different ways that you can get help. Okay. And then in terms of what I offer to help you continue on your journey is there's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and quizzes. This is all accessible from our website, and it's available at no cost. There's never a time that you have to pay for any of these things. It's always available to you at no cost. Then there's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats, which again are available through our website and are also again available at no cost. There's no barriers here for you. It's just your own time, effort, energy, and dedication. If you put that in, the resources and the help is here for you to be able to make your way to enlightenment. There's these ongoing programs that are in person and online where you can learn in the group learning program, which is we take that first book and over a 7-month period, we go chapter by chapter each Sunday, and I walk you through that over a 7-month period. And then there's the Words of the Buddha, Pali Canon, and English Study Group, which is volumes 2 through 13, where I gradually help students in a 1.5-year program to walk themselves through that. And again, these programs are available online or in person, and they're available at no cost. Then you have personal discussions that you can schedule in person or online, because you guys travel now, right? A lot of people travel in the world. You don't have to be here to be able to learn. The way I've set up is there's no barriers. The only barrier that you have is your own dedication, your own diligence. I've removed everything, all of those barriers. And then there's this Facebook group that you guys can ask questions in. Some people like to go there and actually look at other people's questions and look at the answers that I give, and they learn that way too. So feel free to do it that way as well. So these are all the different options for you guys to be able to learn. And these are the timings of the group learning program and the Pali Canon and English study group. Do you guys have any questions on continued support or how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life? No? Okay. So let me just switch screens over here. What I'm going to do then is just end class here by thanking all of you guys for your interest to learn. Thank you for coming each day to be dedicated enough to be able to learn the teachings and consider them to be integrated into your life. As you integrate more and more of the teachings of the Buddha into your life, you're going to see that they're more and more impactful. You're going to see the condition of your mind gradually improving. You're going to see your relationships gradually improving. You're going to see your life gradually improving. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. I think you guys have learned that it's more than just meditation to get to enlightenment. You can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. There's things that you're going to need to learn besides meditation to make your way to enlightenment. So thank you guys for your dedication to learning and growing, because I know it's challenging to come to a place like this and do this inner work. It's much easier to go to a building where there's a bunch of beliefs and people worship and praise and sing and all these kinds of things for an hour or so. It's really easy to go do that. But then afterwards, you have all kinds of difficulties because you haven't learned the wisdom of how to improve your life. This type of practice, it's challenging to show up to a building like this and listen and understand and ask questions and challenge the things that you think you already know, and what is being shared is very different than the way that you approach the world. Well, of course, because these things that I'm teaching you is not what you currently think about or what you currently do, because your mind is having certain challenges and certain struggles. So you're going to hear things from me that is very different than what you currently think about the world and how you currently interact in the world. But in that kind of environment, that's where you're really learning and that's where you're really growing. You have the opportunity to step up and make more and more progress in your life. If you come to a building like this and everything that's being taught you already know, you're in the wrong place. You're not growing. You're not developing. So you would like to be in an environment where someone's teaching something that is different than what you currently know. And that's really challenging to do that inner work. But I really admire people who choose to do that work, because it's more challenging up front, but then later life is so much easier because you've cultivated this wisdom. So I really admire people who come to learn and grow and do this inner work, because I know it's not easy, but it's also not difficult either. You've got help here. You've got somebody who's deeply motivated to help you to get to enlightenment. Because if you can understand what this mental state is, there's nothing that would stand in your way to make your way to this enlightened mental state. So if you need help, I'm here for you. You're welcome to reach out at any time. You can, all these different ways that you're able to do that. So feel free to reach out if you like. I'd also like to take an opportunity here to thank all of you guys for any generosity that you've practiced, whether it's taking out the trash or sweeping or cleaning a bathroom or providing financial support for us to pay for lighting and electric and water and all these different things. Thank you for that. Thank you for food. If you've purchased food for me to help me to sustain my life, you guys are typically quite generous, and I would like to just thank you for that, because that's what allows me to continue to help you and help so many other people in the world. So anything that you've done to provide support and help for me to be able to continue to share these teachings, thank you so much for that. So as you guys go forward today, if there's anything you would like, either today or any other day in the future, you're always welcome to reach out. I'm here to help every single one of you. So this is the official end of our class. Sometimes what students like to do is they like to go out for a group lunch. If you guys would like to do that, I can make some suggestions for you. But otherwise, we're all done here today. If there's anything that you need from me, just feel free to let me know. And perhaps I'll see you guys in one of our future classes, courses, or retreats. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee khap, sawadee khap, sawadee khap.